Uh-oh.
Okay, we'll start with this. It appears that Claressa Shields is likely to box again in either January or February. She recently got everybody's attention due to a verbal spat with Amanda Serrano over the viewership for her rematch with Katie Taylor that then spilled over to a verbal spat with hip-hop recording artist Cameron Giles.
Fiddle-dee-diddle-dee.
And so she will be returning to action. She hasn't been that active in the last 2 years. She only boxed once last year and only once this one. The Marisela Cornejo fight in June of last year and the Vanessa Joanese fight in July of this one. There's a year's time in between the both of those fights. The reason for it is likely that there are just not a lot of girls to fight at those weights where Claressa campaigns. Once you venture north of 154, 160, 168, all the way up to 175, you're talking about a division where there's a grand total of only 30 women worldwide.
And of that 30, how many of those women do you expect to be on the level of Claressa Shields?
And as well schooled. So not only are there less women to choose from, less women to fight, but the ones that are there really aren't on her level. So her last title win came this past July when she stopped Vanessa Joanese inside of 2 rounds at 175 pounds. It does look like she's going to be staying there, at least momentarily, per preliminary reports. Her longtime promoter, Dimitri Salita, said, "I think she'll fight again in either January or February. The only reason she didn't fight again this year after the July fight is because she was busy with the movie."
Bullshit!
Her movie is coming out December 25th in theaters in the United States, and that took up a lot of her time. It should be good, though. She has a great story to tell.
This is the reason he's giving for Claressa having only fought once this year, but she only fought once last year.
And they weren't working on a movie last year, so that hardly seems like an excuse for her to be so sparsely active this one. I mean, unless she's in the movie.
Which she isn't. In the role of Claressa Shields, you have American actress Ryan Destiny.
Seems like Dimitri feels accountable for Claressa's sparse schedule of activity based on her claim that she's the greatest woman of all times. Well, not if you're barely fighting, and when you are fighting, it's in barren weight classes.
That's not to say that she's not one of the best women boxers in the sport right now, because she is, and one of the most accomplished, but context really is key.
Preliminary reports seem to indicate that she's going to be facing newly crowned WBA light heavyweight champion Kenneally.
She's hot.
Australian women often are. At just 5-0 with 2 KOs, became WBA light heavyweight champion in her last fight. Though when a fighter becomes a champion in so few professional bouts,
5 fights.
It's either because they're very good or they're a champion of chance, opportunity, and circumstance.
She's hot.
She's one of 2 other champions at the weight that Claressa Shields can fight. Kenneally's got the WBA, and New Zealand's own Lonnie Daniels has the IBF. The way it is, the World Boxing Council does not have a champion or a belt available for anyone to fight for at this weight, and thus, if Claressa can beat Kenneally and Lonnie Daniels, that would make her undisputed at another weight, technically.
So she's staying up there.
She might as well. There are 2 champions there that she can fight. She's the more well-known fighter, the more recognized fighter, the clear A side over both, and thus making fights with them should be relatively easy. There was a feeling that having won a light heavyweight title, Claressa Shields might drop down to a more densely populated division to perhaps fight the likes of an Alicia Baumgartner or Chris Cyborg at a catch weight of some kind. I never viewed that as realistic, but those sentiments were out there. This is more practical. She's already there. She's got a belt at light heavyweight. See if you can unify it. And with the upcoming biopic, that might lend itself to those fights as profile.
We'll see.
Claressa hasn't made herself an easy fighter to like, an easy fighter to root for, and the criticism is never whether or not she can box or whether or not she's good.
She's one of the best.
It's how she goes about asserting that, because that's the problem. You draw more flies with honey, and whether she likes it or not, this is a popularity contest, as that directly affects how much money you can make and how much celebrity and acknowledgement you will have.
We'll see how long it takes them to make this Kenneally fight, as well as giving Kenneally a closer look. What can she do? What does she bring to the table?
We'll see.
The best fight out there at 135 right now is Tank and Shakur. But both of them acting like some hoes. Straight up. You know, y'all need to get in the ring, man. Both of y'all need to solve. You need to solve. We want to know who the best is in this weight class, man. All these other guys coming up, Keyshawn and all them, man. Okay, let them keep climbing. But y'all too, y'all gotta handle y'all business, man. Next year, stop being soft, stop running, stop making excuses. I'm sick of all these fans talking, oh, such and such this, he hiding, he ducking out. Man, we don't care. Get y'all behind in the ring and solve it that way, period. I don't want to hear nothing about Shakur's boring. I don't want to hear nothing about Tank ain't fought. We don't want to hear none of that. None of that, none of that, none of that. Get in the ring and solve it.
It was the latest outcry from former two-division champion, Hall of Fame inductee turned ESPN analyst Timothy Bradley, who wants to see Shakur and Gervonta get it done.
But what Gervonta wants to do is pack it up, call it a career, and retire. He doesn't see a reason to fight Shakur.
People have been reacting adversely to that admission for at least the last 24 hours. I saw a guy arguing in Gervonta's defense in the comments of one of my videos.
What?
Guy who goes by the name Dan Small 446, who said, I think all of this is going over y'all's head, LOL. He said countless times that he is here to entertain. He does not care about the hype of being the quote-unquote greatest or belts. He's just a dude from the hood who fought for money.
Well, okay. Fighting Shakur gets you more money than fighting Frank Martin. Fighting Shakur gets you more money than fighting Lamont Roach.
Now, he literally explained why he wants to leave, but said in fact he wants 3 fights next year, so I guess we will see who they are.
Do you think he's gonna fight 3 times next year?
Not sure. The PBC are operating at a much reduced capacity. They only did 5 shows this year, so what are the odds they're gonna do 3 of his the next one?
Now, he might feel so inclined to defend Gervonta Davis against any criticism he might have brought on himself, but that's not unanimous. A lot of people, they're sick and tired of it.
A lot of podcasters, a lot of content creators, and casual boxing fans, they're sick of the excuses from Gervonta.
Shakur Stevenson hasn't done anything in the sport of boxing. It's damn near a fartable offense. I mean, you cannot make this shit up.
I'm gonna need you to get in the ring with good defenses ass, no offenses ass, Shakur Steve. That's what I'm gonna need you to do. That's what the fans want you to do.
It's like, bro, how can you justify this, right? How can you sit up here and say this dumbass, goofy ass, Neanderthal ass shit, but then you done fought guys by the likes of Rolly fucking Romero? And I want to know, just by a show of hands, by anybody that knows any inkling about the sport of boxing, that is a fan, that is a casual or a hardcore fan.
Shakur Steve, that's what I want to see. That's what the world want to see. Give us what we want. You want the money? God damn it, give us the fights.
I want to know, what in the flying did a Rolly Romero do to warrant a fight with Gervonta Tank Davis? I'll wait.
A lot of guys who might have otherwise supported Gervonta Davis are now turning on him.
Because you can't justify it, and you can't sell people Lamont Roach fights in its place. Who you need to fight is Shakur. Devin's moved up, so is Teofimo.
Ryan too, so I don't see how you're going to have a rematch with him, and that was your best bet to get it a decent-sized bag. So if it's not looking likely that any of that is going to happen, the least you can do is give us this, and you don't want to.
Ask yourself a question. If the bag that he got for Frank Martin were a good-sized bag, good-sized purse, do you think he'd be talking like this?
If the bag that he were about to get, if he thought that he's going to make buku dollars with Lamont Roach, Do you think he would be talking like this? See, he knows that the well is running dry.
Writing's on the wall. All the signs are there.
Some people think that this is all a marketing ploy to draw attention to his fight with Lamont Roach. I think you're giving Gervonta too much credit.
Not some marketing genius or mastermind.
Devising elaborate strategies to get eyes on his fights. The kid can barely form a cohesive sentence.
Coherent.
When he says he wants to retire next year, I believe him because the well is running dry. At the PBC, they're losing their grip on boxing. They can't pay him what he wants to be paid anymore. And the only options that are out there, well, they're the dangerous ones. It's not just Shakur Stevenson. Keyshawn Davis is calling you out too. All while casual observers, content creators, and podcasters alike are turning on him.
Wants to retire so that nobody can say they beat him, but looking back, who did he fight that could?
That stood a chance. Not only do I think he means business, I'm happy about it. The sport will be better off without him.
Good riddance.
It's not this Greek tragedy that he may be departing from the sport in the not-so-distant future. It's a good thing.
It's one less title at lightweight being held hostage by a guy who has no intentions of unifying, no intention of going undisputed.
One less gimmick. If he goes, what did you really lose? A bunch of fights you weren't going to get anyway?
Bye.
He can go. I don't look at it as a loss for the sport because you can't lose what you never had. You were never going to get him versus Stevenson anyway, so hasta la vista.
From your understanding, the point of view, and have you put that offer towards Conor Benn as his team, as you stated you would do?
Yeah, look, I think it's their team that's being stupid, not Chris. Chris knows his value. He's a proven pay-per-view star. He's been earning seven figures for years and years and years. He's walked away from fights, many big fights, as we know, with Golovkin and Canelo. But I've seen the comments around whether it's our side that's sensible. It's whether their side's sensible. I think Chris is willing to give up a lot, to be honest. And if not, he's told me to make the Lara fight and make the world title fight, and that's very exciting for a boxer to be able to fight for a world title again. So as a promoter, it's frustrating because it's such a big fight. That of course it's the one that the promoters want, but ultimately it's their side's gonna have to be sensible, and then the fight can happen.
Being sensible has never been Chris Eubank Jr.'s strong suit. So when Ben Shalom instructs Conor Benn to be sensible on Chris's behalf, Conor Benn responded to Ben Shalom's comments by saying, "He's lost more fights than he's headlined pay-per-views, you little twerp." So there continues to be trouble in paradise for what is supposed to be the long-awaited Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn fight, though I'm not broken up about it because, like I said before, a fight between two guys that are as far apart in weight as these two, for no other reason than their namesake, is a little bit too gimmicky for me.
Not saying that the fight has no significance or no value, because it does, though personally, I would rather see the both of them in title fights.
That's just me personally, though. Why Chris Eubank Jr. is seemingly so difficult to deal with and do a fight with, it's because he has no shame and he's not afraid to walk away.
It's a strength.
In its own way it is. For Chris, walking away from a Gennady Golovkin fight, very big name at the time, turning down a Canelo Alvarez fight in America. Clearly he didn't want those fights that bad.
It's a strength.
Because he wants what he wants, irrespective of what people are going to say about him. And people say a lot.
But he doesn't care.
He wants what he wants. And in being able to walk away, it's a strength, a form of it.
Ben Shalom wants to dress it up and spin it as if it's the Conor Benn side that's being difficult. They're the ones being stupid, but history tells a different story. It's Chris Eubank Jr. that has had several fights fall through already. Big ones.
It's the other way around. And look, I'll be the first to admit, Eubank walks away from big fights when it doesn't make sense. We've seen it with Canelo, we've seen it with Golovkin. But the reality of this situation is you've got a fighter that's been out 2 years.
That's spin. Conor Benn has not been out 2 years. He boxed 2 times in America.
He's never fought for titles.
Yeah, and Chris has never won a title.
He's never fought really for seven figures. He's never fought on a pay-per-view show against someone that has and is and been doing it consistently for years. So it's not actually, I think Chris, in his position, I want to make the fight selfishly as a promoter, of course. But I think on this occasion, it's the other side that aren't being sensible about it. And Chris is in a position in life where he doesn't need to do something that's stupid. And if there's an opportunity to fight for a world title, that's the fight that he's instructed me to make. I'm still hopeful as a promoter that everyone becomes sensible and then the fight happens. But it's just one of those things, and hopefully it happens. But if not, as I say, at the moment, Chris has told me, make the Lara fight. This could be his chance to win a world title.
Conor Benn responded to that by saying, "You've made exactly one offer which was embarrassing and lower than the last time, even though it's now a stadium fight. It was so bad my team didn't even want to show it to me. Ain't no one on this side being stupid. You're just clearly way out of your league."
The way it looks, Chris doesn't really want that Conor Benn fight. It's not important to him.
It seems more important to Ben Shalom than it does to Chris Eubank Jr. Chris is fine moving on and fighting someone else, namely middleweight champion Arislandi Lara. I'm okay with that.
I am.
Ben Shalom, in an effort to salvage the fight, said it would probably be one of the worst business decisions ever made in sports history if Conor Benn doesn't fight Chris Eubank. Conor says, "All I know is getting business advice from Benjamin Shalom would be like asking Errol Spence Jr. for driving lessons." Ben Shalom probably thought that in signing Chris Eubank Jr. and working with him, he'd be a part of a big British fight.
The biggest one he's ever been associated with. Not realizing that's not why Chris Eubank Jr. went over there, and I said as much already. Chris Eubank Jr. didn't cross over to the boxer side of things because of how driven he was to make the Conor Benn fight. No, Conor's with Matchroom.
Remember, Chris had just achieved free agency from Wasserman. He broke away from them. So if it were really about making a Conor Benn fight, he could have negotiated that fight as a free agent. He went to Boxer.
He went to Benn because Benn is a buffoon.
Ben is going to overpay him. That's why he went over there, to make other fights. Not this one. This one that might not happen simultaneously. The World Boxing Council president, Mauricio Suleiman, said this about Conor Benn. He said, "I've had communications with Conor Benn. We've been very open, and he deserves to be fighting for the world title, and I hope he does soon." The world title that Mario Barrios is in possession of. They're going their separate ways. That's the look of it. Chris is going to fight for the WBA at middle. Conor's going to fight for the WBC at welter.
That's it.
After they're done doing what they're doing, and if they both make it through it, the fight between them is a fight they could revisit. Of course it is. There's no time constraint.
But there's no guarantees either. You see, if Chris Eubank Jr., hypothetically speaking, beats Arislandi Lara for the WBA and Hamza Shiraz in February, if he beats Carlos for the WBC, that sets up an all-British unification match right there at 160.
At times, just having options, more than one, is leverage unto itself at negotiations that Chris, in that scenario, would not be limited to boxing Conor Benn for a big fight. He could also box Hamza.
You think he'd do that?
I think he would tell Team Ben that, to get them to play ball. Chris is a sharp pencil. I'll give him that.